Hi, my name is Joe Lalore. I've written books for Rush, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, Heart, and so on. Over 30 books for United Artists and Warner Brothers. I'd like to talk to you today about pandiatonic harmony and its uses on the guitar for today's music, especially ambient music. What pandiatonic chords and harmony refer to are chords that were developed during the 20th century by composers looking for new ways to create music. In these chords, they want to create chords that have no pull. In Western civilization, our music, the chords have pull and a roll in the key. For example, in the key of C, you have C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, back to C. The one chord, two chord, so on. And each chord has a roll in that key. For example, the one chord tonic, that's like home, resting. The 5 chord pulls to the 1. If you put more tension in that chord by making it a 7 or a 13 or 13 flat 9, you're creating more tension, which then when you resolve makes tension and release. And that's a very important part of our music, the flow between tension and calm. But in pandiatonic harmony, the composers did not want any pull. They wanted each chord to be a pillar of colors or a mix of colors. And then when it moves on to the next one, the contrast is there, but there's no pull. It would be like clouds in the sky or maybe mountain peaks where you look at each one. And so this is the same principle, and it's really a wonderful way to create music. So let me give you an example how the composers would build these chords. First of all, they would use certain intervals. For example, let's take the interval of a second. They would build chords with seconds, like C, D, E. Now also too, they would move these chords any way they wanted. One very popular way is parallel chord movement or chord planing, which was especially popular with Debussy. And in this technique, you just move the chord. Now move it up. Hear that? So here we have, so I'm moving it anywhere I want, depending on what I hear, what colors I want. Now, if I add notes in there, added note chords, or a pedal tone where you keep one note throughout the movement. Let's say I keep this G throughout the chords like this. You hear how the color changes now? So that's major seconds. Now, of course, we can use minor seconds or augmented seconds, but I'm going to get to that in a second, and I'm going to show you a book that I've written that has all these pillars already written out for you. The second one would be our traditional tertian harmony, music made in thirds. Let's take a major 7th chord. Beautiful chord. Now, let's move that around in parallel motion. Now, if I add let's say I add a drone, a note, an A. Hear how those colors change? Fourths, very popular in jazz and especially in classical music and jazz. Listen to the sound of chords created by fourths. Now, I'm not using any effects because I want you to hear the chords purely. Fifths. The fifth with added notes in. 6, 7s. Some are going to be darker colors, some are light, some are going to be a mixture of both. Now, you can also use, well, I'll get to that in a second. Let me show you the book that I've written. Now, you'll see where it says Guitar Chords for the 21st Century, over 22,000 alternative chords. Now, you might say, wait, that's crazy, 22,000 chords. How do you come up with 22,000 chords? Well, let me show you. What I've done is finger through using chords, seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, so on, mixing seconds and thirds, thirds and fourths, so on, and I've come up with 1,848 chords with C as its root. So let's say, now, they will be in 6 positions on the guitar. As you move them up the neck, you know, as same as, let's say, a power chord changes its name. So here's C, D, E flat, E. So when you multiply that, that's how you come up with over 22,000. Now you could come up with more, because if we start adding other notes into these formations, I'm going to call them colors. This is a book of colors. This is a book not just of chords, but this is a book of colors. So if you add pedal tones, you add drones in, you add your own notes, change a note, right? For example, we talked about that major 7th. Suppose I make it G major 7 flat 5. And then let's say I put, or I put a C in the bass. That's only one example of, by altering any one of these chord structures, you come up with your own chords and ideas. And as I said, now, if you use these chords and let's say you loop them, or you play with another guitarist or whatever, and you play against these chords, when you solo or improvise, you know yourself, the background affects the front layer. So if we have a background of a certain chord and you improvise against that chord, you're going to have a certain sound. If it's a plain G chord, but if you improvise a chord with fourths, then the notes that you're playing will have a different sound. So if you were writing music, writing a song, even a popular song, and let's say you use these chords, they would generate melodies in your mind or coming through your fingers that would be totally different than if you're using just traditional chords. And if you're making chord progressions based on the movement of the melody, a chord melody, for example. So if you took, let's say, this chord and moved it by this, so if you composed a piece where instead of using the chords as for a long period of time standing there, as I said, like a pillar, but let's say you used it in a solo setting or an ostinato pattern that keeps repeating itself over and over, you could see the possibilities are truly endless. These chords and this idea of pandiatonic chords and harmony then will offer you an incredible amount of sounds where you don't have to sound like anyone else, because the chords you use and the way you move them could not be duplicated by anyone else, because they wouldn't have what you're thinking of. And right now I haven't even gone from, let's say a pillar based on fifths to one based on fourths to one based on seconds. So we're not even talking about mixing that, which of course you would do. So this is what I've worked years on. As I said, in this book, This took long time to work on. It's not only chords, but it's progressions. I give you ideas on how to move the chords through cycles, through synthetic scales, through 12-tone, attacking it from maybe a 12-tone approach, which I will talk about in some other discussions that I will put up on YouTube. But also too, if you're interested in this, I have a free course or series of discussions on YouTube about chords for the 21st century. It used in a way, maybe traditional ways, or for alternative chords. But this here, I think, is perfect for ambient music because it lends itself so perfectly to what you might be doing. And remember that composers such as Stravinsky, Ravel, and Copland, and all these wonderful composers, the way they approach sound to freedom, and that's what I'm expressing to you, to be totally free in the way you create your music, in the way you create your progressions and your chords. So thank you for your time, and if you're interested, the book is available on Amazon. It's very reasonable, and thank you again for your time.